We'll now discuss right angle trigonometry. And essentially, we're going to do this using a right triangle. So if we have a right triangle with side lengths A and B and hypotenuse C, the Pythagorean theorem gives us that C squared is equal to A squared plus B squared. And this is going to be very helpful in finding out everything we need to know during this video. So we're going to start by defining our trig functions. There will be 6 of them. Essentially, I pick an angle in my triangle that I'm going to call theta. And then we have that sine of theta is the opposite side over the hypotenuse. Cosine theta is the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. And tangent theta is opposite over hypotenuse. Not hypotenuse, opposite over adjacent. Essentially what that means when I look at my right triangle over here, the side opposite is going to be A because it's the side that goes directly opposite this angle. And our hypotenuse is C. Adjacent is the side that's actually adjoined to the angle, so B. The hypotenuse is still C, and then the last one we have A over B. And these are only 3 of our trig functions. There are actually 6. We'll define our other trig functions now. So the first one is cosecant. And cosecant is going to be the hypotenuse over the opposite side, which is going to be the same thing as 1 over sine. Secant theta is the hypotenuse over the adjacent side, which is the same thing as 1 over cosine theta. And finally, cotangent theta is opposite over, or rather, adjacent over opposite, which is the same thing as 1 over tangent theta. So we can define these 3 in terms of the other 3. And in fact, we can even simplify it more than that. Tangent theta is actually also sine theta over cosine theta. So we can actually define everything in terms of just sine and cosine. Let's consider this right triangle with sides 3, 4, and 5, and we want to find all 6 trig functions of the marked angle. So sine theta will be the opposite side, which is 4, over the hypotenuse, which is 5. Cosine is my adjacent side, which is 3, over the hypotenuse. And tangent is opposite over adjacent. The other 3, cosecant theta is hypotenuse over opposite, which you can also see is taking the sine and flipping the fraction. Secant theta is hypotenuse over adjacent, which you can also see as flipping the cosine fraction. And then finally, cotangent of theta is adjacent over hypotenuse, which is the tangent fraction flipped. Let's consider this. We know that sine is going to be the square root of 3 over 2, and cosine of theta is 1/2, and we want to find the rest of the trig functions. We can start by drawing a triangle and labeling our angle theta. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so we can label at least 2 sides. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so we can label the adjacent side in the hypotenuse, which once again has already been labeled. And now I can use that to find the rest of my trig functions. Tangent is opposite over adjacent, which is just the square root of 3. Cosecant is hypotenuse over opposite, which we do like to rationalize our denominators. So we get 2 over the square root of 3 over 3. Secant is hypotenuse over adjacent, which gives us 2. And then finally, cotangent, which is adjacent over hypotenuse, or adjacent over opposite. And once again, rationalizing the denominator. So we have square root of 3 over 3. In reality, we only need one of our trig functions to find the other 5. In this case, I know theta, which is opposite over hypotenuse, or I know sine, opposite over hypotenuse, and I can use the Pythagorean theorem that says our missing side squared plus 3 squared is equal to 7 squared. So we have a squared plus 9 is equal to 49. This tells us that a squared is equal to 40. So a is the square root of 40, or 2 square root of 10. And using that, we can find the rest of the trig functions. Cosine of theta is going to be our adjacent side over the hypotenuse. Tangent theta is opposite over adjacent. And once we rationalize, that becomes 3 square root of 10 over 20. Cosecant of theta is hypotenuse over opposite. Secant of theta is hypotenuse over adjacent. And once again, we want to simplify. So we would have 7 square root of 10 over 20. Finally, cotangent of theta, which is adjacent over opposite. So now we have all 6 of our trig functions.